desperation led me to the place I now wish I'd never found. It was a Thursday night. My car had broken down just outside of a sleepy town in rural Kentucky. I'd spent the last of my money on gas, hoping to make it to Nashville by morning. Instead, I found myself stranded, exhausted, and without a dollar to my name. My phone was at 3%. No Uber, no AAA, no family to call. Just me, the darkening sky, and the whisper of wind over forgotten roads. I stumbled into the diner that looked like it hadn't been cleaned since the 70s. The waitress, a stiff woman in a stained apron, handed me a menu without a word. I ordered coffee, counting change I dug from the floor of my backpack. I must have looked worse than I felt because the man 2 stools down slid over a flyer. It was simple. Rooms for rent, $5/night, cash only, private, quiet, no questions. Below that was an address scribbled in faded ink. "Miss Gracie runs the place," the man said. His eyes were pale and glassy, like they hadn't blinked in years. "She's kind, if you're polite." I didn't have options, so I thanked him and walked the mile to the address. The house sat hunched at the end of a dead-end road, its windows like sunken eyes watching my every move. A crooked sign on the porch read, "Gracie's Boarding House, Vacancy." I knocked once. The door creaked open by itself. Inside, the air smelled like mothballs and dust. A frail woman appeared from the shadows, skin paper thin and hair the color of ash. "You need a room?" she asked. "Yes, just for the night." She looked me over, then slowly nodded. $5. No noise after 10. No wandering. Bathrooms down the hall. You'll be in room 3. I handed her my crumpled bill and climbed the narrow staircase. Room 3 was small but clean. Too clean, like no one had lived in it for decades. The bed was made, sheets stiff with starch. A single lamp hummed in the corner. I dropped my bag and lay down, grateful for a roof. But the relief didn't last long. At exactly 10:15 p.m., I heard voices, murmurs, soft and urgent, just beyond the thin walls. Then footsteps, slow, dragging. A door creaked. Someone was walking up and down the hallway, pausing at each room. Then came the knock. 3 gentle taps. Not on my door, but on the door next to mine. I held my breath. And someone answered from inside that room. A voice that didn't sound quite human. I froze. The voice that answered the knock wasn't right. It was low, watery, like someone speaking through a throat full of liquid. Words slurred, syllables wrong. But it was a response. There was someone in that room. I pressed my ear to the wall. "Yes," the voice rasped. Then silence. No reply. No footsteps retreating. Just the creak of floorboards beneath something or someone standing completely still outside that door. Then, another knock, but not on the same door. This time it was mine. 3 soft taps, exactly the same rhythm. I backed away from the door like a child afraid of the dark. My instincts screamed at me not to answer, not to speak. I stood frozen in the middle of the room, heart thundering. The knock didn't come again. Nothing moved. I waited for what felt like hours. Eventually, I crept toward the door and peered through the peephole. The hallway was empty. I tried to laugh it off, blame it on exhaustion. Maybe I was overtired and imagining things. But when I lay back down, I noticed something that chilled me to the bone. Under the door, just a sliver of space between the floor and the wood, there was a shadow, long and unmoving. Someone was still standing there. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake staring at the door, too afraid to move, too afraid to blink. The shadow didn't leave until dawn. When sunlight began to filter through the curtains, it finally disappeared like smoke. By morning, I was determined to leave. I packed my bag, grabbed the doorknob, and paused. There was a note on the floor, folded, no name. I opened it with trembling hands. "You shouldn't have come here. They remember the living." I stumbled down the stairs, heart racing. Miss Gracie was in the kitchen, humming to herself as she stirred something thick and dark in a pot. "I'd like to leave," I said quickly. "Thank you, but—" "You paid for the night," she said without turning around. "You're free to go." As I stepped toward the door, she finally looked at me. Her eyes were cloudy, and for a split second, they didn't look human. "You heard them, didn't you?" she asked softly. I didn't answer. She just smiled. "The others usually stay quiet, unless you disturb them." I bolted out the front door. The air outside felt thinner, colder. As I walked away, I turned to look back at the house. Every window had a face watching me, pale, still. And I swear one of them waved. I didn't stop walking until the house disappeared behind a thicket of trees. Every step away from that place felt like dragging my legs through thick mud, like something was pulling at me, begging me to return. I told myself it was adrenaline, fear, maybe even hallucination. But deep down, I knew something had shifted. I had looked into that house, and it had looked back. I made it to the main road. My phone was dead, of course. I had no ride, no cash, no way out. Just a half-zipped backpack in the center of that house still clinging to my skin. I wandered until I found a small gas station. The clerk, a guy barely older than me, watched me warily as I asked if I could charge my phone. As it powered up behind the counter, I noticed a bulletin board near the restrooms, yellowed papers curling from years of sun and dust. There, half covered by a missing dog flyer, was something that made my blood run cold. A photograph of Miss Gracie's house, black and white, dated 1984. The headline above it read, "Gracie's boarding house shut down after tragic fire. 7 dead." I stared at it, throat dry. Beneath the headline, in faded type, "Despite the flames, no bodies were recovered. Locals report strange lights and voices. Town officials have sealed the property indefinitely." I turned to the clerk. "Do you know this place?" He looked at the photo and chuckled without humor. "That dump? Everyone around here knows it. Kids dare each other to walk up to it on Halloween. Some swear it's still standing, though the fire gutted it decades ago." "Why?" I didn't answer. Couldn't. Because I had slept there. I had spoken to Miss Gracie. I had seen people in the windows. I left the gas station in a daze, clutching my phone like it was the only real thing left. I walked in circles, not knowing what to do or where to go. Then the notifications started. 1, 2, 3 photos. Taken from inside room 3. Photos I never took. The first showed me sleeping on the bed. The second was closer, directly above me. And the third showed me awake, eyes wide in terror, staring into the camera. I dropped the phone. And from the shadows of the nearby trees, I heard 3 soft knocks. I stumbled back, nearly falling into the gravel as the echo of those 3 knocks rang in my ears. But there was no door here, no wall to knock on. I was standing in an open clearing by the gas station, trees barely moving in the wind. Then came the 4th knock. Louder, sharper, closer. My eyes scanned the trees, heart slamming against my ribs. For a brief second, I saw movement. A pale shape ducking behind a trunk, just out of reach. Just far enough to leave doubt. I couldn't breathe. It was broad daylight, and I was still being followed. I grabbed my phone from the ground, screen cracked but still lit. The 3 photos remained open in the gallery, mocking me. I scrolled through the album, praying there weren't more. There were. Dozens, all time-stamped between 2 a.m. and 5 a.m., all from angles no human should have had access to. Some from the hallway, some from outside my door, some from inside the bathroom where I never remembered being. And then, one final photo. Miss Gracie, standing beside my bed, her face stretched into a wide, unnatural smile. Behind her, the shadows seemed to twist and take shape, faces forming, mouths open in silent screams. I deleted the entire gallery in a panic, but even after they were gone, I felt no relief. Because the knocking hadn't stopped. It followed me back to town. I heard it in the restroom stall at the diner. I heard it inside the convenience store freezer. People around me noticed nothing. They looked through me like I didn't exist, like I was slowly being forgotten by the living. I tried to call someone, anyone. The calls wouldn't go through. Each time the line went dead after one ring. Except for one. It was a woman's voice, static-filled and cold. "You stayed in room 3, she whispered. "That's where it began." I hung up. I didn't sleep that night, curled on a bench near the bus station. My eyes wouldn't close. Every time I blinked, I saw her face, pale, smiling. And in the distance, always in the distance, came the sound of knocking. Soft, steady, counting down. I couldn't take it anymore. By the 5th sunrise, with dark circles under my eyes and sanity unraveling like a frayed rope, I made a decision that now seems unthinkable. I went back. Something had its claws in me. Maybe it was the need for answers. Maybe the house itself had called me back. Either way, I found myself walking the same gravel road, eyes locked on that cursed house as it reappeared between the trees, just as it was that first night. Whole, untouched, not burned. But that's impossible, right? I climbed the porch steps, each one groaning beneath my weight like it remembered me. The door creaked open before I could even touch it. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of dust and rot. Time didn't feel linear here. Light didn't fall right, and the ticking of a clock I never saw echoed through the hall like a heartbeat. "Back so soon?" Miss Gracie's voice floated from the parlor. I stepped in. She was seated in the same chair, knitting something black and formless on her lap. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "I deleted the photos," I said. Her hands stopped moving. "You tried," she corrected. My stomach dropped. "Why me?" I asked. She gave a soft chuckle. "You stayed in room 3. That room chooses who it remembers. You left too early. You broke the pattern." I shook my head, backing away. There were people in the windows. "Not people," she said, rising to her feet. "Memories, shadows. Guess who never left?" Then she pointed down the hall. "To make this right, you must return to your room." "No," I whispered, but my feet moved on their own. The hallway stretched longer with each step, the air growing colder, heavier. I reached room 3. The door opened before I touched it. Inside, the bed was perfectly made. The mirror above the dresser reflected not me, but something else. A version of me still asleep, still trapped. I tried to run. The door slammed shut behind me. Darkness flooded in like rising water. Then came the sound. 3 knocks. Not from the hallway, from inside the closet. I backed into the far corner, breath shallow, mind spinning. The doorknob to the closet twisted once. Then twice. It opened. And from the shadows inside, something stepped out. It wore my face. It smiled with my mouth. And it whispered, "Go ahead, sleep. I'll take your place." I couldn't move. The thing standing in front of me was me, but it wasn't right. Its eyes were too wide, too dry, like they hadn't blinked in days. Its mouth twitched in slow, deliberate smiles that never felt human. I pressed myself against the wall, my heart threatening to burst. "What are you?" I managed to croak. It tilted its head, studying me like a broken reflection. "I'm what room 3 needed," it said softly. "A replacement. You left too soon. You didn't finish your stay." The lights flickered. "I'm here to balance the count," it added. "One leaves, one stays." No, I'm not staying," I said, lunging for the door. It moved faster than anything I'd ever seen. One moment it was across the room, the next it had me by the throat, slamming me back against the wall. Its grip was ice. "You left a hole," it hissed. "Now you must sleep." The room began to bend, literally bend, like the walls were curving inward, closing in. The bed creaked and groaned as something underneath it shifted, scraped, crawled. Behind the door, I heard voices. Low, murmuring voices whispering in a language I didn't recognize. Some cried, some laughed. One repeated my name over and over. My doppelganger leaned in close, its cold breath against my ear. Don't worry, you won't remember much when it's over. I reacted on instinct. With a surge of panic, I shoved it backward, sending it crashing into the mirror. Glass exploded in every direction, but there was no reflection anymore, only darkness inside the frame, swirling like black smoke. It howled, covering its face, and I used the moment to bolt. I didn't stop to check the hallway. I didn't look into the parlor. I just ran, feet pounding the warped wooden floors, past the kitchen, past the staircase, until I hit the front door and ripped it open. Morning light blinded me. The air outside was sharp, real. I didn't look back. Not once. I ran all the way down the gravel road, not stopping until the house was just a nightmare again, tucked behind trees that now seemed thinner, like the forest itself had changed. At the edge of town, I collapsed, but the relief didn't last. Because that night, back in the motel I checked into miles away, I saw something horrifying on the old TV mounted to the wall. The local news. A photo of me, but not me, was on the screen. Underneath it, local man found dead in abandoned boarding house fire. Room 3, unrecognizable. I screamed. And in the reflection of the blank screen, I wasn't alone. I stumbled backward from the TV, my mouth dry, throat tight. The screen had gone dark again, but the reflection remained. Someone else was standing just behind me. Heart thudding, I spun around. No one there. But when I turned back to the screen, there it was again. Not just a shape this time, but a figure. Tall, pale, and wearing my face. Its eyes locked onto mine through the glass, and then it blinked. I backed into the motel's tiny kitchenette, grabbing the first thing I could find, an old butter knife. Useless, I knew, but I needed something to hold on to, something to tell myself this was still real. I yanked the TV plug from the wall, sparks shot out, the screen flickered, then died. Silence. I took a shaky breath, and then came the knock. Not at the door. From inside the bathroom. My head snapped in that direction. The door was slightly ajar. The light inside flickered as if someone had just walked under it. Not again, I whispered. I edged closer, slowly pushing the door open with the tip of the knife. The bathroom was empty, except for the mirror. There, written in condensation as if someone had just stepped out of a hot shower, were the words, "You checked out too early." My reflection stared back at me, but its mouth was moving. I wasn't speaking. Its mouth moved faster, mouthing words I couldn't hear. I leaned in, and I saw them. Hands, pale, cold fingers, crawling up from inside the mirror, pressing against the glass like it was water. I stumbled back. Then the phone rang. One sharp, piercing ring. I hesitated before picking up. A voice spoke, but it wasn't a voice from this world. It was layered, like dozens of mouths whispering at once. "You must come back. Room 3 needs balance. You cannot run forever." Then, a soft giggle. Gracie's giggle. I slammed the phone down, but the walls were already bleeding shadows. Outlines of guests who had never checked out. Shapes crawling across the ceiling. Eyes in the power outlets. And that reflection, still mouthing words like a silent chant. Still watching. I grabbed my bag and ran, down the motel hallway, past the vacant stares of other tenants, their faces blank and unmoving, until I hit the front desk and froze. Because the woman behind the counter was Miss Gracie, smiling, as if she'd been here the entire time. She slid a familiar brass key across the counter. "Room 3. I saved it just for you, dear." I didn't remember walking back. One moment, I was standing at the motel front desk, Miss Gracie smiling like she owned the world. The next, I was inside room 3 again. Same peeling wallpaper, same old wooden floorboards that creaked like whispers. The bed was freshly made, as if no one had ever laid in it, or maybe no one alive had. The brass key rested in my hand, cold, too cold. I dropped it on the nightstand. My body moved like it didn't belong to me. Exhaustion crept over my limbs like vines, heavy and slow. Every part of me screamed to run, to fight, but my muscles didn't listen. I sat on the edge of the bed, and somehow I slept. But I didn't dream. It was worse. I remembered. Faces. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, pressed against windows, buried beneath floorboards, locked in closets. Guess who had checked in but never checked out? Some had clawed the wallpaper from the walls. Some had written their names behind picture frames in desperate loops. Some had simply dissolved into the room. Their memories poured into me like floodwaters, cold, choking, infinite. I saw a man from 1976 who never left. A newlywed in 1989 whose husband vanished overnight. A child with hollow eyes whispering to the mirror. And always, always Miss Gracie, never aging, always smiling, watching it all. Then I woke up. But I wasn't alone. Someone was sitting in the chair across the room. They looked just like me. I blinked. He didn't. My double leaned forward. "We slept," he said calmly. "That's all she needed." "No," I said, standing up. "I'm done. I'm leaving. I don't care what this place wants." The room groaned. My double stood too, mirroring every move. "You can't leave now," he said. "You're part of the house. It needs a memory." I lunged at him. We crashed to the floor, fists flying. But it was like fighting smoke. His skin turned cold and transparent between punches. And worse, my arms began to fade too. The room started shaking. The walls split, bleeding black tar that moved like snakes. The mirror shattered, but instead of shards, it spilled more faces. They poured out, reaching, crying, begging. And then Miss Gracie appeared in the doorway. She didn't speak. She only raised a single, withered finger and pointed to the bed. I looked back and saw me, already lying there, eyes closed, still, breathing shallowly. And in that moment, I knew. One of us would stay. Only one. I stood frozen, watching myself lying motionless on the bed. My chest rose and fell, barely perceptible, like I was clinging to the last sliver of life. Or maybe the room hadn't let me go yet. The other me, my reflection made flesh, watched calmly from the corner, head tilted in quiet amusement. Miss Gracie still blocked the door, finger pointed like a death sentence. "You have to choose," the double said. "It's the rule. One stays, one leaves." "But I didn't agree to this," I shouted, my voice cracking. "This wasn't the deal." Miss Gracie smiled faintly. "It was the price." The walls began to pulse like veins. The floor rippled like skin stretched too tight. The entire room had turned into a living organism, breathing, watching, waiting. "You should feel honored," my double whispered. "You're not just a guest anymore. You're part of the story, part of the house." "No," I said, shaking my head. "I won't let this happen." I bolted for the bed. If I could get back into my own body, reclaim it, maybe I could escape. Maybe I could finish what I started. But the double was faster. He grabbed me, slamming me against the wall. My head cracked against the rotting plaster, stars bursting behind my eyes. He leaned in, his face so close I could smell the mildew on his breath. "I'm not giving this up," he hissed. "Not after waiting this long." I kicked him backward with everything I had, sending him sprawling. Then I threw myself onto the bed, onto my own chest, gripping my arms, trying to sync my breathing, trying to become myself again. My eyes fluttered closed. I felt the room pulling at me, memories unraveling, faces screaming. Then, a snap, like a switch being thrown. Silence, stillness. I sat up, breathing hard. Miss Gracie was gone. The walls were plain again. No veins, no whispers. The air smelled clean. I stood slowly looking around. My double was gone too. I was alone. Was it over? I walked to the door. My hand hovered over the knob. I twisted it, expecting resistance, but it opened easily. The hallway outside was bright with sunlight. Cautiously, I stepped out. Down the stairs, through the empty lobby, and out the front door. The air was warm. Birds were singing. I kept walking. Down the driveway, onto the road. No shadows, no voices. Freedom. But as I glanced back at the boarding house one last time, I saw someone watching me from the upstairs window. They looked exactly like me, and they were smiling. I didn't stop walking, didn't look back again. The sunlight felt too good, too real. After everything inside that cursed boarding house, even the distant sound of passing cars made me want to fall to my knees in gratitude. I made it. I got out. At least that's what I told myself. But something was wrong. As I passed by a storefront window, I caught a glimpse of my reflection. It was off. The man in the glass walked when I did, moved when I did. But his eyes, they weren't mine. They stared back at me with a faint, amused twinkle. And just before I turned away, he winked. My stomach dropped. I rushed into a gas station nearby, heading straight for the bathroom. Locking the door behind me, I stood in front of the mirror, gripping the sides of the sink. I stared hard. My face was familiar, but not completely. A faint, almost imperceptible scar beneath my eye that hadn't been there before. The shape of my pupils, just slightly too large. Then I did something strange. I tested the mirror. I raised my left hand. The reflection raised its right. Perfect symmetry, like it should be. I narrowed my eyes, trying to find a crack in the illusion. But it held. Still, something wasn't right. I pulled out my phone, scrolled to a selfie I'd taken a week ago. My jawline was sharper then, my smile softer, more human. I barely recognized myself now. The door behind me creaked. I spun around, nothing. But when I looked back at the mirror, my reflection hadn't turned. It was still staring at me, still smiling. And slowly it began to raise its hand. Not to mimic me, to wave goodbye. I stumbled backward, nearly knocking over the paper towel dispenser. The lights flickered once. Then the mirror cracked, just slightly, down the middle. A thin line like a fracture in time. And from the other side of the mirror, a voice echoed in a whisper only I could hear. You never left. I rushed out of the bathroom, out of the gas station, out into the open air again. But everything around me suddenly felt like a stage, a set, designed to make me feel safe, calm, free. But I wasn't. I couldn't be. The motel, that room, Miss Gracie, my double something followed me. And no matter how far I ran, it was already inside me, waiting, watching, planning its next move. Days passed, but sleep refused to come. Every night I'd wake in a cold sweat, haunted by whispers that seemed to seep from the shadows of my own room. My reflection was different now, no longer a mirror of myself, but a separate entity that lingered just behind my eyes. Then one evening, the phone rang. I hesitated but answered. Hello? A familiar, eerie voice whispered back, soft and chilling. You can't escape, but you can return. The line went dead. Moments later, a package appeared on my doorstep. No sender. Inside was a simple brass key, the same key from room 3, and a note written in looping, trembling handwriting. Come back, the house misses you. I didn't know what to feel. Fear? Curiosity? Or an unbearable pull I couldn't resist? I tried to ignore it, but the key burned in my pocket. That night, my reflection smiled for the first time on its own. It opened its mouth, mouthing words silently. were waiting. I realized then that the house was not just a place, it was a prison. A place hungry for new memories, new guests. And it wanted me back. But why? What did it want with me? As dawn approached, I made a choice. I was going back, not because I was brave, but because I was desperate. And sometimes desperation is the only way out. The night was thick with fog as I approached the boarding house again. The familiar creak of the gate echoed through the still air, welcoming me back like an old friend or a hungry enemy. The brass key burned in my hand, a cruel reminder of the deal I was about to make. Miss Gracie stood in the doorway, her smile wider than ever, eyes gleaming with a secret no living person should know. "You're home," she whispered, her voice like silk wrapping around my soul. I swallowed hard, stepping inside the house that had never truly let me go. The halls were alive, whispers swirling, shadows dancing on the walls. The other guests, pale and silent, watched me pass with hollow eyes. I felt my heart beat slow as I reached room 3. The door creaked open on its own. Inside, the bed was made perfectly, as if waiting just for me. I slid the key into the lock, turning it slowly. The moment the door shut behind me, the world shifted. The room grew cold. The walls pulsed. And from the mirror, my reflection stepped forward. Not me, but her, Miss Gracie. She smiled, eyes full of ancient sorrow and hunger. "You stayed," she said. "Now you belong." I realized then that the room was not just a place to rest. It was a cage, a tomb, and I was its newest prisoner. The house had won. Because sometimes the cheapest room comes with the highest price. And the other guests, they were already dead, but they never left. And neither would I. The door locked behind me with a final, chilling click. No checkout time. No escape. Just the endless, silent company of the dead.